Today we're going to field strip or disassemble the new Taurus GX2 pistol for cleaning purposes. And as usual, the first thing we need to do is verify that the gun is unloaded by removing the magazine first, locking the slide to the rear, and verifying there is no round in the chamber. Alright, on the Taurus GX2, you want to close the slide. Now that you've verified it is unloaded, point the gun in a safe direction, press the trigger, rotate the takedown lever clockwise, and the slide will release from the frame, and then you can pull it right off the front of the frame. Alright, and now turn the slide over, compress the recoil spring and guide rod just a little bit so you can lift it up and out of the slide, and now the barrel can be lifted up and pulled out of the slide. And that is as far apart as you need to disassemble the Taurus GX2 for cleaning purposes. As soon as I complete the cleaning video, I'll link to that up here in the corner. Thanks for watching. Please hit like below if you found this video helpful, and we'll see you in the next video. Today we're going to field strip or disassemble, clean, lubricate, and reassemble a Taurus GX2 9mm handgun. First thing we're always going to do is remove the magazine, make sure it is completely unloaded, lock the slide back, verify there are no rounds in the chamber and no magazine in the firearm. Alright, to field strip the Taurus GX2, after verifying it is completely unloaded, point the gun in a safe direction, press the trigger, and then we're going to rotate the takedown lever clockwise, just like that, and you'll see the slide pops forward. So now it is released, and just pull it right off the front of the gun. Next we want to remove the recoil spring and guide rod right here. Just put pressure right here, squeeze it back and lift it up a little bit, and this will come right out. And now the barrel can be pushed up, lifted out, move it forward a little bit, and just pull it right out of the firearm. Alright, and that is as far apart as you need to take the Taurus GX2 for cleaning purposes. The supplies you're going to need for cleaning the Taurus GX2, there's not a whole lot here. What I use, first of all, you want eye protection. You want nitrile gloves to protect your hands from any solvent you're going to be using. The solvent I use is hops number 9, and this is optional, but I like to put it in a pump dispenser. And what this does is you put the solvent in the bottom here and you pump this to get a small amount that you want to use, and it keeps this portion of it from getting contaminated. You're going to need some kind of a gun oil. I use original gun oil. I'll put a link in the description for all these items. There's a lot of different oils you can use. You can use a small pinpoint oiler like this one. You can use something like this break-free CLP. You're going to need some cotton swabs. I like to use these double-ended cotton swabs. They have a regular end and a pointed end. These are perfect for getting into slide cuts on semi-automatic slides. Alright, and if you don't have the special cotton swabs, drugstore cotton swabs will work. You're going to need some way to get into the bore or the inside of the barrel. So this is a rod. This is from a standard gun cleaning kit. You can buy these separate, or you can get a pretty inexpensive kit that'll have one of these in it. With that, you're going to need a brush. You want the appropriate sized bronze or brass brush. This one is made for 9mm. And you're going to need a loop, and this is for pushing the patches through the barrel. You're going to need a gun brush. A toothbrush will work if you don't have a gun brush, but this has a big head and a smaller brush head, and it's perfect for getting in different areas of the gun. You're going to need about 2" by 2" cotton patches. These are the patches we're going to push through the barrel. You'll see how we do that in the video. And you just need some cut up t-shirts, cotton rags to use for wiping everything down. So we're just going to clean each of the 4 pieces, then we're going to lubricate and reassemble. So it doesn't matter which one you start with. I like to start with the barrel simply because that is the dirtiest part of the gun typically. If you look down inside the barrel, you can see all the buildup there. That's unburned carbon and other debris from bullets traveling through here at 1300 feet per second. So we're going to clean all that up. Alright, there's a couple ways you can clean the inside of the barrel, and the first way is going to be the standard way. It's called the rod and patches method. We're going to push a bunch of patches through there, and then there's a shortcut which I'll show you next. Alright, for the rod and patches method, you want to get some gloves on if you're going to use a solvent, which I'm going to use here. This is the hops number 9 solvent, and first thing we're going to want to do is put the loop on your rod and then get a patch. Just put it through the loop. Get it pretty soaked with solvent. So the first thing we want to do is just get solvent inside the barrel. So we're just going to push a solvent soaked patch through the barrel, back and forth a couple of times. Alright, and now the inside of the barrel is soaked with solvent, and we're just going to let that sit for a few minutes. Once you get solvent inside the barrel, Take off your loop and put on your bronze or brass brush. After your barrel has sat for a few minutes, just take your brush, push it through the barrel, back and forth a couple of times, and that's just going to loosen all that crud that's in there. And then once you've done that, remove the brush, put your loop back on there, put another clean patch through the loop, get it nice and wet with solvent again. All right, you might want to put a paper towel down. It's a little bit messy this way. All right, and then just push the patch. Look how much dirt came out now because it's all been loosened and the brush kind of loosened everything up. So push a patch through, throw that patch away, get a new patch, and just keep repeating this procedure until the patches come out pretty clean. They don't have to be perfectly clean. Get some more solvent and just keep pushing patches through there. Probably 3 or 4 patches is all it's going to take. After your patches start coming out pretty clean, then start pushing dry patches through there. Don't put any solvent on them. We're just going to use these patches to clean up the solvent and all the remaining crud. Again, push several through until they come out clean and dry. All right, won't take too many. I'm already about done. All right, so that didn't take too long. All right, now when we look down the barrel, it is nice and clean. All right, now I'm going to show you the shortcut to cleaning the inside of the barrel, and that is to use a bore snake. Now, this is a Hops number 9 bore snake. It's the Viper version. It's my preferred version. It's a little bit better than the original. So all a bore snake is this long snake-like quilted cotton here with built-in brushes here to clean the inside of the bore. So this saves a lot of time, but the way you do it is you still want to put solvent in the barrel when you start. So at the beginning, you just get some solvent on a cotton swab and just swab the inside of the barrel with a good amount of solvent. Let it sit for a few minutes. Then after a few minutes are up, you just drop the bore snake through the barrel, pull it through, and what it's going to do is the brushes are going to scour the inside. The whole rest of this snake is acting like all those patches that we put through there. So you just pull this through and it's going to remove the dirt and kind of scour the inside and clean the inside and polish it up with only a few passes. I would normally pull this through maybe 2-3 times, depending on how dirty the barrel is, and that's pretty much it. Then you're going to be done. Now, if your barrel is super dirty and you haven't cleaned it in a long time, then I would probably use the first method, but this is a great time saver, great shortcut. I'll put a link in the description if you want to check out the bore snakes. All right, and once you got the inside of the barrel clean, just get a cotton swab, clean up the outside of the barrel a little bit here, right around here. Make sure you get this feed ramp. This is where the rounds get pushed into the barrel on this ramp, so you want that to be clean. And then anywhere else on the outside of the barrel where you see some crud or dirt, carbon, just get some solvent on that. All right, and you can get a little solvent on the whole barrel, and then just take one of your rags and wipe the solvent off. Make sure you get the crown, which is the end of the barrel. It's called the crown, this area here. Make sure you get down in here in this lug area and just wipe it off real good. This barrel is looking pretty clean. All right, now we are done with the barrel. All right, next we're going to clean the Taurus GX2 slide. This is not too dirty really, but it's got some unburned carbon that you can see in here. All right, so first you can get in here with your gun brush and just get kind of all the loose stuff out of there. Going to brush it. Make sure you get in these slide cuts, this notch that runs all the way up and down the slide on both sides. Just give that a quick brushing, get those nice and clean in there. All right, then you can get down pretty good with this small brush. Make sure you get the breech face here. This is where the firing pin comes through that hole there. All right, and if you look closely, this is your extractor, this little hook right here that grabs onto the empty brass and pulls it out of the gun after each shot. So you want to make sure that is nice and clean. Just get a brush in there right underneath that little hook and get it nice and clean. If you can't get a brush in there, get in there with your cotton swab. The pointy end of the cotton swab works real well. And after we brush it out, we're just going to get a little solvent and just clean all the areas up that you can get to with the cotton swab. You want to get in these slide cut notches all the way up and down so The pointy end of the cotton swab works real well, fits right in there, and you can just clean them out real nice and easy and quick. All right, get another one for the other side. Get that nice and cleaned up. And then make sure you get that breech face I was talking about right here with some solvent. That gets pretty dirty. That's right where the rounds ignite right there. All right, and just keep using fresh cotton swabs until you get the slide as clean as you want it to be. And then get in there with some dry cotton swabs to kind of clean up all of that solvent you got in there. Make sure you blow out any cotton swab strands that might get stuck in there a little bit. And don't forget up here inside these areas here where the barrel slides through and your guide rod comes through. Right, and then you can take a rag and kind of wipe everything down as a last wipe down. Try and get everything spiffy in there. And you can also take the rag, just lay it over the top there and use the bristles of the brush to push the rag down into the little slots. Get everything nice and clean. That's just another way to do it. Alright, the slide is looking pretty clean. Now on the outside of the slide, you can do the same thing. This one isn't too bad, but if you want to just kind of wipe this down, you can get a little solvent on there and just kind of get in these grooves a little bit. They tend to get a little bit dirty in these serrations right here. And then give everything a nice wipe down with a cloth rag. You want to be careful with the solvent around your sights. The solvent can do a little bit of damage to the plastic, especially the front sight here where it's got a little bit of paint. You don't want to get any solvent on that. You can use some CLP gun oil to clean that. That'll work, and it's not going to hurt anything. All right, we got the slide nice and clean inside and out. All right, let's move on to the frame. All right, on the frame, we're going to predominantly focus on just the metal parts up here in the top. It's probably not going to be too dirty unless you've done a whole lot of shooting with your gun, but we're just going to get these rails mostly. Just get a little solvent, and we're just going to quickly go over these rails. Anywhere you see metal, just want to clean it up a little bit, get some solvent on there. Yeah, see, this isn't too dirty at all. Use the pointy side of the cotton swab to kind of get underneath the rails real quick, just to give the slide a nice place to glide back and forth. All right, and then either use a rag or a dry cotton swab to wipe off all the dirt. You can get right underneath the rail either with your fingernail, or you can get in there with a dry swab. Just get that nice and clean. This one is actually pretty clean, so we're good. Get down inside. It's a good idea to kind of get inside the grip here. Get a clean toothbrush or a gun brush and just kind of make sure there's nothing in there building up or any kind of debris. All right, it's looking pretty good. And if your grip area is dirty right here, I would get a very clean brush. This one's not super clean, but I would just get a clean brush and just kind of work on that with a brush to get that cleaned up. You could get your brush a little damp with some mild soap and water, something like that to clean that up. Just nice and gentle. All right, and once you're satisfied with the cleanliness of your frame, we can now move on to the recoil spring and guide rod. This usually doesn't need a whole lot of attention either. I would just get in here with a brush. Just kind of brush that down if it's dirty at all. All right, this one looks pretty clean. All right, next we're going to move on to the Taurus GX2 magazine. And magazines don't get too dirty, but if you are out on the range and you drop this in a puddle or in the dirt or in the gravel, you are going to want to disassemble this magazine, take it apart, clean everything out of it, and then put it back together. I have a video on that. I'll link up here on how to do that procedure. But for our purposes here, if the magazine is fairly clean, we're just going to wipe it down with a rag to get any unburned carbon off of it, make sure there's nothing building up. This yellow piece here, this is called the follower, and this is what pushes the rounds up to the top of the magazine under spring pressure. And you want to make sure that's wiped down, kind of clean. That's where all your dirt's primarily going to be. And the other place on the magazine is right underneath, is right in this little area here, right at the top of the magazine. This is probably where it gets the dirtiest. Just give that a quick wipe down. Do that on both sides. You can just get a cotton swab in there. All right, and make sure the magazine has good spring pressure pushing back up on you, and you are good to go with the magazine. All right, now that we've cleaned each piece of the firearm, now we're just going to lubricate, and then we're going to reassemble. So to lubricate the Taurus GX2, first of all, we're not going to put any lubrication at all, any kind of oil on the magazine. We don't want to get any oil on the ammunition. The GX2 manual says to coat all metal parts with a very light coating of oil. So the way I do that is I'm just going to take a rag. I'm going to get some gun oil. This is original gun oil. This is my preferred gun oil, but any gun oil is going to work. I'm just going to put one drop on a rag. And starting with the barrel, I'm just going to give it just a good wipe down. We're barely putting any oil on here, but it's just to help prevent corrosion and rust. We're going to do the same thing on the slide. We're going to put a drop of oil on a rag right here, and we're just going to very lightly coat all the areas in the slide. A quick wipe down. You want to take extra care not to get any oil in the firing pin hole or in this blue area here, which is where the firing pin moves back and forth. We don't want to get any oil in that area. We want to keep that nice and dry. Oil attracts dirt, and then it becomes kind of sludgy, and then it makes it harder for the firing pin to slide back and forth, so you don't want that. And frame, same thing. Little drop of oil on the rag, and just coat these metal parts very lightly. Again, we're barely getting any oil on here. And then next it says to lubricate the frame and rails and the barrel lockup points. So basically that's going to be this rail here, this frame rail, this frame rail. So all I'm going to do is put maybe like not even a half drop on there, just the tiniest little drop on there, because you don't need much. All right, I'm going to put one little drop right on this surface here. Again, not even really a full drop, just kind of smear that in there. And the barrel lockup points, there's some places where the barrel, that barrel kind of locks in place there. Basically that means we want to put one little drop right down in the bottom here, just kind of smear that around a little bit. And then you want one little drop on these two kind of lugs right here. And again, smear them in, wipe some of it off. You don't need much at all right there. All right, and that is about it for lubrication. You do not need to lubricate the recoil spring and guide rod at all. So now we are ready to reassemble the firearm. To reassemble the firearm, take your slide and hold it upside down. Take your barrel like this and just drop this into the slide so it's nice and tight like that. Take your recoil spring and guide rod. This is the front and this is the back. So you want to put it in this way. Squeeze it just a little bit so that it can be pushed down right into that notch right there. And you want that, you don't want it sitting like that. You want it right in the middle like that. Okay, and it should be sitting all the way down. It should be nice and parallel with this edge of the slide right here. And then take your frame, turn the slide over, lay it down on the frame like this. Line up these notches in the slide with this frame rail right here so that it goes on like that. So it goes on just like that, nice and flat, and then slide it on and push it all the way back. This takedown lever will automatically put itself back up like that. Let go of the slide, and now we are good to go. And just try the slide a few times, make sure it feels right. And it does. All right, make sure everything looks good. And the next thing you're going to want to do is a function and safety check. And I'm going to put that video up in the corner here when it's ready to go. And that's just a few very quick checks to make sure your gun is working properly before you carry it or take it to the range. All right, if you found this video helpful, please hit like below. Please check out the description for all the supplies that we used in the video today. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video. Today we're going to do a function and safety check on a Taurus GX2 pistol. Anytime you take a semi-automatic firearm apart for cleaning or any other reason and reassemble it, there's just a few quick tests you want to go through to make sure everything is functioning properly. These checks are not called out in the user manual, however these are basic checks that work with just about any semi-automatic firearm. This first check is specifically if you have taken apart or disassembled the slide, and this is called the firing pin safety check. You can skip to the next check if you did not disassemble your slide, or if you don't want to pop the slide off again to do this check. When you look closely at the slide, you can see this is the firing pin right here, and you can see when I push on it, you can see it moving in the firing pin hole, but it does not protrude. If it protrudes, that's how it fires the round that's in the chamber. So the only time it's going to protrude is if the firing pin safety plunger right here is pressed, and that is only pressed when the trigger is being pulled. So you want to make sure that when you press this down and push on the firing pin, now you can see that when I press on the back of the firing pin, it does protrude through the firing pin hole. And when I let go of the plunger right here, now it will not come through. Okay, so that's the first check. If the firing pin does come through without pressing on the plunger, that increases the likelihood of a round going off if you were to drop the pistol and it's loaded. All right, before we do the next checks, we're always going to make sure that our firearm is unloaded. Make sure there is no magazine in the firearm and no round in the chamber. All right, the first check is going to be a magazine release check. Real quick and simple, just take a magazine, pop it into the gun, make sure you can't pull it out unless you're pressing the magazine release, and when you press the magazine release, the magazine should freely drop out of the gun. Make sure you check that with every magazine that you have. The next check is the slide lock on an empty magazine check. When you're firing your gun and you run out of ammo, your slide should lock open. The way to check that is to take an empty magazine, load it into the gun, and then rack the slide, and it should stay open. It should lock open when an empty magazine is present in the gun. And then when you remove the magazine, press down the slide lock, it should then close. Next check is the trigger safety check. So on the trigger, there's this little lever here. This is actually a trigger safety, and that's designed to make sure the trigger will not go all the way back unless this is pressed first. So to test this safety, first we want to verify the gun is unloaded. Anytime we're going to pull the trigger and we don't want it to go bang, we always double check that it's unloaded, even if we know it is. Okay, so rack the slide, the gun is ready to fire. Point the gun in a safe direction always, and then grab the trigger on the edges and make sure you cannot press it backwards. And we can't. So now put your finger on the trigger, make sure you press that and point it in a safe direction. Make sure the trigger releases the striker. Next we're going to check the trigger reset. So basically this is just checking the functionality of the trigger real quick. So rack the slide, after verifying it is unloaded, point it in a safe direction, press the trigger but hold it back, and then rack the slide while holding the trigger back. Release the trigger slowly until you hear a click, and then press the trigger again, and it should release the striker again. Okay, now we're going to check the manual thumb safety. Not every firearm has this, but the ones that do, you can do this check. So once again, verify the firearm is unloaded, cycle the slide so that it's ready to fire, put the thumb safety in the safe or on position, and then point the gun in a safe direction, and attempt to pull the trigger, and nothing should happen. Now take the safety off, point the gun in a safe direction, press the trigger, and it should release the striker, and you should hear that click. Alright, the next test is what we call the out of battery test. So your gun should not fire if the slide is not completely closed. So if for some reason after it's fired, the slide does not fully close and it ends up getting stuck, we call that out of battery. This would be in battery, this would be out of battery. So we want to make sure the firearm does not fire if it is out of battery. So once again, rack the slide, verify it is unloaded, point the gun in a safe direction, hold the slide out of battery, press the trigger, nothing should happen. Let the slide go into battery, press the trigger, and it should release the striker. The next test is the extractor and ejector test. So we're going to test to make sure your gun is extracting and ejecting rounds properly when it's firing. So the best way to check that without being on the range is to get some 9mm dummy rounds. These are just fake ammunition basically that are made of aluminum, and they look exactly like ammunition and they fit in the gun like ammunition. They're great for testing functionality of your firearm. For this test, I will get 5 dummy rounds and load them into the magazine. Just always make sure that they're dummy rounds and not real ammunition. Alright, I will load 5 dummy rounds into a magazine. Then I'm going to load the firearm with 5 dummy rounds in a magazine. Rack the slide. Make sure 1 dummy round is in the chamber. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to rack the slide briskly 5 times to simulate firing the weapon. Each time I rack the slide, a dummy round should be extracted from the chamber and ejected from the gun. After the 5th time, the slide should lock back because the magazine is empty. So this is a great test to make sure everything's functioning smoothly with your firearm. You must rack the slide briskly, so it's going to look like this. And then on the last time, when the magazine is empty, the slide should lock back. And that shows me that my magazine is feeding properly and the gun is extracting and ejecting properly. Alright, this last test also optional, but if you want to test to make sure your sights are lined up properly, what you want to do is get yourself a laser bore sight. Such as this one by Sightmark. There's lots out there. You want to make sure you get one that is the right caliber for your particular weapon. This one is 9mm. This is basically a laser pointer that is made to fit a 9mm chamber. So what you do with this, verify the gun is unloaded, drop the laser sighter in the chamber like that, gently close the firearm. Now you want to aim this at the wall, I would say a good 30 feet away if possible. The furthest wall you can do in your house is where you want this to line up. So it's going to look something like this. Hold your firearm pointed at the wall, line up your sights, and make sure that your sights line up with where that laser is pointing. Take your front sight, line it up with your rear sight. The camera's only going to focus on one at a time, and make sure that the laser pointer is pointed at the same exact place that your sights are when they're lined up, just like that. So this one is lined up pretty darn perfectly. All right, and that's a way to check to make sure your sights are lined up. All right, and that's it for the function and safety checks. Once you learn these checks, you should be able to do this whole thing in just a couple of minutes. If you found this video helpful, please hit like below. Check out the description below if you need some dummy rounds or a bore sighter. I'll leave links down there for that. And thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video. Today we're going to quickly reassemble the Taurus GX2 after cleaning. So it's a very simple procedure. You take the slide, hold it upside down, take the barrel, drop it into the slide, just like that. And then take the recoil spring and guide rod. This end goes in the front. This end is in the back, so just stick that in here and then put pressure on this toward the front of the gun so that you can push it down into that notch. And then you want to make sure it's centered between these two sides here. Make sure it's centered as much as possible in the gun, and it should look just like that. And then simply turn the slide over, take the frame and line up these notches with these rails, just like this. Put it flat on and slide it backward. You'll see it's lined up in those notches. Just come back carefully. You want to be careful you don't scratch the back of your gun with the ejector right here. Just bring it back nice and slow. Once you get it here, now you just want to force the slide all the way back as far as it goes and then let go. And you'll see this will have automatically returned to its correct position. And now just check the slide to make sure it feels right. All right, and after that, you'll want to do a function and safety check. I'll put a link up here to that video when it is ready. And that's just a few quick checks to go through after you reassemble your firearm to make sure everything's working properly and ready for the range or ready for you to carry. All right, if you found this video helpful, please hit like below. Thanks for watching, please subscribe, and we'll see you in the next video. In this video, we're going to disassemble and clean a Taurus GX2 magazine. So if you have a magazine and you've dropped it in the dirt or the gravel at the gun range, or you've just put a whole lot of rounds through it and you want to make sure it's super clean so it doesn't malfunction on you, I'm going to show you how to disassemble this magazine and clean it. So on the bottom of the magazine, there's a little button there. And if you push the button down, you want to push this base plate off in this direction. So it's going to look like this. Just push that down. 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch, and you want to make sure you have eye protection, because at this point when you pull the base plate off, you're going to have a pretty strong spring pushing up. So you want to make sure your thumb is over that, and this spring could fly out and hit you in the face. So you want to have eye protection and keep your thumb on that. Alright, so this comes out, and this little insert here at the bottom, you don't have to take it off, but you're going to be able to do a little bit better job if you pop that right off. Alright, and then once that's out, this is called the follower, and this is what pushes up against the rounds to push them into the gun. So this will just slide out the bottom once the spring is removed. Alright, and then at this point you just want to clean each of these pieces. You do not want to get oil inside the magazine. And to be honest, a lot of times the spring, you can just wipe that off with a dry cloth. These really don't get too dirty, but again, if you've dropped this maybe in a puddle or it got wet or there's a lot of dirt and crud, you can use solvent to clean this spring and then just wipe it down real good. Same thing with the follower. You don't want to use solvent on the follower because it is plastic. It'll come pretty clean with just a good wipe down, right? And then wipe down the base plate. This magazine's not very dirty. I'm just kind of demonstrating what to do here. And then you want to get the inside of the magazine tube. So a couple ways to do that. You can take a brush and just kind of brush it like that. Or sometimes what I do, I just take a few cotton rags and kind of push them through a couple of times. And that's going to clean the inside pretty good. If it's really dirty, you can get some solvent in there with a Q-tip and get it clean, and then push your rags through to clean the solvent off. Alright, once you have the inside clean, if the outside needs a good cleaning, you can do that. And you can use solvent on this because it is metal. Just get it nice and clean. And one place that you kind of want to make sure is clean is right underneath these feed lips in the top. This is what holds the rounds in place and allows them to slide forward. So just get a little solvent on a cotton swab and clean right at the top here. That's where it's dirtiest. Get that nice and clean, and then get a dry cotton swab in there to clean that up. And that's about all there is to cleaning the magazine. So now we want to put it back together. Alright, so to put the follower back in, you want to line up the follower just like this. And it goes in this way with this little notch. There's a little piece that sticks out right here on the follower, and that lines up with this cutout right here. So it's going to go in this way. Take the spring and make sure the spring is oriented this way so that it fits right up here in the follower. And then you can just push the follower up with the spring up in the top of the magazine like that. Alright, and then turn the magazine upside down and hold it this way. Now this piece is going to line up like this. It's got the curved sides in the front to match the magazine tube, and that's going to go on to the bottom here, and you just want to kind of snap that back on. It'll snap on by itself with the pressure, but just make sure that is kind of on there like that. And then carefully again, do not point it at your face. Push this down into the magazine, push it a little bit down below, put your thumb over top. Make sure that's down there pretty good. And then line up the base plate. These little notches are going to slide onto these little ridges here. So you just kind of bring that forward. Alright, and you're going to want to get it over top of that little button. So you kind of have to push this down pretty hard when you're sliding it on. So once you get it like that, all you need to do is push it back and it'll pop into place if you've done everything right. If not, just start over and try it again. And then just kind of push down on this to make sure it goes down and pops back up again under spring pressure. And now your magazine is all back together. Alright, after you're done reassembling your Taurus GX2 magazine, if you want to test it out, what I usually do is get some snap caps. These are dummy rounds, 9mm dummy rounds. These are nothing but aluminum in the shape of a 9mm round, so they're completely safe, great for testing. So first, I just put a few in the magazine just to make sure everything loads properly. I'll put about 5 dummy rounds in here. And then what I'll do is take my verified unloaded Taurus GX2 and I will load a magazine with 5 dummy rounds in it. Close the slide, verify that I have a dummy round in there. So now what I'm going to do is simulate firing the gun by racking the slide 5 times very briskly. And if the magazine is put together properly, each time I rack the slide, a round will be ejected from the gun and a new round will be loaded. And then after the 5th time, when the magazine is empty, the magazine should lock the slide to the rear. So it's going to look like this. Alright, and the slide locked to the rear on the empty magazine. And now my rounds are over here on the ground and on the desk. So everything is working properly. Alright, that completes the test. Make sure you do this on each magazine that you disassemble and then reassemble. Alright, if you found this video helpful, please hit like below. Please check out the description if you want to pick up some dummy rounds or any of the supplies that we used in cleaning the magazine today. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video. Today we're going to completely disassemble the Taurus GX2 slide for a deep detailed cleaning. As usual, always verify that your firearm is unloaded, no magazine in the gun, and no round in the chamber. Now we're just going to remove the slide, point the gun in a safe direction, press the trigger, and then rotate the takedown lever clockwise, and that will release the slide to come right off the front of the frame. Turn the slide over, release the recoil spring and guide rod and the barrel. I would highly recommend that you watch this entire video first so you can see the steps that are required and make sure you are up for the challenge. Some parts are easy, some parts are not so easy, so please keep that in mind and don't leave me nasty comments if you take this apart and can't get it back together. Before you start this procedure, you want to make sure you have eye protection. There are springs involved and sometimes they go launching into your face. But these are the tools I'm going to need to disassemble and reassemble the GX2 slide. So you want to have a 3/32 pin punch, with a flat, regular pin punch with a flat end on it, some gun grease, and that is going to be to hold some springs in place for reassembly, which is a little bit tricky. This is helpful but not absolutely necessary. This is just a bench block to kind of hold things up in the air while you're pushing pins and doing various things. This is a kind of a tip that I use for reassembling the slide. If you don't have one of these, you can still do it, but it's going to be a lot trickier. I'm sure you can find a way to do it, but you'll see how I use this in the reassembly portion of the video, and you'll see how easy that this is going to make it. Alright, the first thing we need to do is remove this rear cover. It is held in place by spring pressure on this blue spacer down in here. So we need to take pressure off of the spacer. So get a small pin punch and put it right in this gap between the firing pin lug and this blue spacer, and you want to push this down. And while you're pushing that down, you want to push this cover in this direction. So it's going to look like this. Push this down, and then the cover will come right off. And when that cover comes off, keep your finger there, because now there's a spring that's pushing up a little bit. That probably won't pop out, but it might, so make sure you're prepared for that. Alright, and then you can pull the firing pin and striker assembly out, and this is what the striker assembly looks like. I am also going to disassemble this so you can see how to clean this completely. Alright, if all you want to do is clean the firing pin or striker assembly and the striker assembly channel, you can stop here. We can disassemble this and clean it, and then clean the firing pin channel. That might be all you're looking to do here, but if you're looking to go further, I'll show you how to remove the extractor and the firing pin safety plunger right here. Alright, so this is the firing pin safety plunger. This is your extractor, which is this right here. This is the extractor claw right here. And holding these in is a pin. This little circle right here is actually a pin, which you need to push down against spring pressure. There's a spring underneath. You want to get yourself a small pin punch. This is a 3/32 pin punch. And we're going to use this, and all we want to do is center this on the pin and push straight down. Alright, and then push down pretty hard on that. And when you press hard enough, you'll hear a click, and you'll see your extractor start to back out of there. Release your pin punch out of there. Keep your finger over top, and then pop that out. And what happens is the little plunger popped up because there's a spring underneath of it. Your extractor popped out because there's a spring right there on there. There's a little bit of grease on it holding that together, and that's important. You're going to want grease on that when you put it back together. Alright, and then turn this all upside down, and a couple things are going to come out. Alright, we have your firing pin plunger. It's got a spring here. Again, there's grease on it. That grease is there to kind of hold things in place when you put it back together. So you want to leave that grease on there, or clean it and then put new grease on there. And this little pin also has its own spring. These two springs are similar but different, so don't get them confused. The extractor spring steel is actually a little thicker, and this is a little more narrow than this one. This one's a little lighter weight spring. Notice the difference there, and try and keep this with the firing pin plunger so don't get them confused. Alright, and keep this one with the extractor when we clean things, and this one's pretty obvious because it's the only one that's going to fit inside here. So all these things come apart. Alright, this comes off of here. Of course, we're not going to take the sights off the slide. The front sight comes off with a special tool that goes right through this hole if you want to take the front sight off, or remove it, replace it, repair it, whatever. And the rear sights, you want to tap them left or right to push that out. But again, I wouldn't recommend doing that unless you're going to change the sights or if they're already out of alignment. And here are all the pieces after you've disassembled the slide. One more thing we can do is disassemble the striker or firing pin assembly. Alright, now we want to take the firing pin assembly apart, or the striker assembly, depending on what you want to call it. And what I like to use is a little bench block here. You can use anything, but you need to get this lug to be held up in the air so that you can push this spring down. And then these two, they're called cups. They will come apart like that. They're two pieces. Let them fall off. And then slowly and gently let the spring come up. So you're going to end up with the firing pin apart like this. This spring comes off. Firing pin comes out of this little spacer right here, and there's another little spring on the other side of the spacer, and that also can come off. Alright, now we just need to clean all of these pieces. Alright, as far as cleaning supplies, always recommend eye protection I always recommend nitrile gloves, some cotton rags. These are just cut up t-shirt. These are my favorite cotton swabs. They're double-ended. They have a pointy end and a regular end and a nice long shaft in between. A pipe cleaner is something that you'll see me use quite a bit in the cleaning of the slide here. So I use Otis pipe cleaners. I use Hops No. 9 solvent. You can use any solvent, but this is what I use. It's pretty inexpensive. I keep it in a dispenser. This is really handy. You just open this up and you press down on the top. It just brings up enough solvent to use in the cup at the top, and it keeps all the rest of the solvent from getting contaminated. So you don't need that, but I recommend it. You can certainly use drugstore Q-tips to get this done. You will be able to do it without some of these things, but these things make it a lot easier. All right, to clean the firing pin pieces, it's real simple. You can just take some cotton rags and wipe everything down if it's not too dirty. If it does have a lot of dirt buildup on there, you can get some gloves on and then get some Hoppies No. 9 right in the dispenser here, and just, you can clean it with the solvent. Just apply some solvent on there and then wipe it off with a rag. And just do that for every piece. When you get to the spacer, Hoppies No. 9 isn't too hard on plastics, but I would make sure you get all of it off of there after you're done cleaning that with a solvent. Just make sure it's nice and dry. Get the dry end of your cotton swab and make sure you get all that solvent off of there. You can clean these little cups as well. They may not be too dirty, but just get them clean. Wipe them down with a rag. Be careful with these cups. They're small and they're easy to drop. To get the springs, a lot of times you can just wipe down springs with a rag. If they're really dirty, you can get a swab and just kind of go through the middle. Get any dirt out of the middle like that if you want, and then dry it off with the other end. Same thing with this spring. Yeah, not too bad, but it is a little bit dirty. And then just kind of dry that off. Put a dry swab through there. Get all the solvent off. All right. So that's it for cleaning the firing pin assembly. Alright, next we'll just clean up the rest of these pieces here. The extractor is probably going to be the dirtiest, so we probably want to for sure get some solvent on that. Make sure you get under the extractor claw. That's the most important part of the extractor. You see how dirty that is, and that's responsible for grabbing onto your fired brass, so you really need to make sure that's clean. And then get the rest of it with a little bit of solvent. Make sure you get down in the hole there. These pointy cotton swabs are perfect for getting down in there. You see how much dirt gets in there. You don't have to be 100% spick and span, but since I got it apart, I'm going to go ahead and clean it up as good as I can. Alright, and once you're done with the extractor, we're going to go and clean the extractor spring. And to clean the spring, you could just wipe it down, or if it is really dirty, get a pipe cleaner, get a little bit of solvent on one end, and just push the pipe cleaner with the solvent through the spring. And then to dry it off, you just push it the rest of the way through, and the pipe cleaner is going to clean up the solvent off of there. And just blow it off. Make sure you get any pipe cleaner lint, and then you are good to go on the spring. Next, we want to clean the firing pin safety plunger and spring. Basically, we're going to do the same thing. Get some cotton swabs and just swab it down with some solvent. Make sure you get in the little opening here at the bottom. Get all the crud out of there. There might be some grease in there, which you're going to put some more grease in there to put it back together. We'll get to that shortly. And then wipe it all down. I actually already cleaned these few little items. I thought my camera was running, but it turned out it was not running. So I am now re-cleaning it, even though it's already cleaned, just so you can see the method that I used. Alright, and the same thing with the spring. Just get a pipe cleaner with some solvent on one end, put that through there, and then you can dry it off with the other end. Blow out any lint, and you are done with that. And lastly, we have the extractor pin that holds the extractor in and its matching spring. Same thing with this. This has got a really small opening in here. Get a little solvent down in there. Get that clean like that. If you can't get your cotton swab in there, get a pipe cleaner down in there, and that'll get that nice and clean. And then wipe that down. Make sure you get the dry end of a pipe cleaner in there to get all that solvent out. Alright, and then the spring, same deal. This is a much smaller spring, but pipe cleaner will still fit through there. Little solvent on it, and just push that through there. Pull it back out, and then you can dry it with the other end. Just that quick. Make sure you get any pipe cleaner lint off of there. Alright, dry it real quick with a rag, and we are done with that. And then the last piece is this back cover piece. you can usually just wipe that down, or you can actually wash that with soap and water if you want, if you don't want to get solvent on it. And you clean it out with a cotton swab. Doesn't get too bad. Alright, that's nice and clean. Get the slide itself. Now for the purposes of this video, I'm only going to clean the places where these little parts came out of. I'm not going to clean the entire slide. That is covered in my GX2 cleaning video. But this video, we're just going to clean all the areas that we just exposed by pulling those pieces out. So basically to do that, the biggest, dirtiest place is going to be in the firing pin channel. So you want to get some solvent on a cotton swab because it gets right down in there. These nice long cotton swabs are great for this. Just get in this channel real good. And then get it in with a dry cotton swab. Just use fresh cotton swabs until you get that nice and clean. You don't want to get any oil in this area because if the oil causes some dirt buildup, because dirt sticks to oil, it can cause a little bit of a problem in there for your firing pin to move easily and freely. Once I clean it that way, I like to get a pipe cleaner and push it through so it can come all the way through the firing pin hole to make sure everything is clear all the way through there. Then of course blow that out to get everything out of that channel. Alright, and now we just want to do a similar thing for all these openings here where we took parts out of. Cotton swabs with solvent is the ticket here. Just get in there as best you can. Get everything nice and clean. Just use a few swabs until everything comes out clean. And if the swabs don't fit, use your pipe cleaner to get in there. Alright, and now next we want to get in this extractor area here where the extractor sits. A little solvent on a cotton swab down in there, and then a little bit on the breech face here as well, and then dry it off as usual with a dry cotton swab. Alright, then you can do a final wipe down if you need to with a rag. Get everything dry and clean, and there we are. We are pretty good now. Now we want to make sure down in the bottom of these are dry because we're going to put some springs down in there. We can also get this area here where the cover plate goes on. Make sure there's nothing in these grooves. Make for easy reassembly. Blow everything out. All right, we are good to go. Now everything is clean, all the parts are clean, and now we're going to reassemble. All right, now we want to reassemble the firing pin or striker assembly. No lubrication goes on this at all. No lube. And we're just going to put this spring, the first spring, threads on here like that. We don't want lube because if you put lube on there and it will cause any dirt that gets in there to stick to it, and then next thing you know, you have a sludgy situation where it could impede the free movement of the firing pin. So that's why. So anyway, okay, put the spacer on. Goes on just like that. Kind of hold that in place. Now the spring, it's very important you put it on the right way. One end kind of has an open end like that. The other end is closed with a complete circle. So the open end, where this pin is, this part is sticking out like that, that's what goes down this way. All right, so that this nice round part of the spring is there to lock these cups in place. At this point, we need something to support this end of the firing pin. You can't support it from here because you just push things right through it. So what you kind of need to do is get something like this. You could get the edge of a block of wood or masking tape or anything to kind of hold this up in the air. All right, so when you get this in here like this, all right, you want to get a hold of the top of the spring. And it's a pretty strong spring, so if you want, you can wrap a piece of cloth around there. It'll be a lot more comfortable for your fingers. I'm not going to do that because I'm going to make sure you can see what I'm doing here. All right, so grab the very top, kind of like that, and then push it down below this little shoulder here. And then get one half of the cup here, kind of lock it in with your finger. Get the other half and put it in that way to make a complete cup, and then gently release the spring, but I gently let it up because you want to make sure it gets around the outside of the bottom of the cup so that it comes up like that. I'll warn you now, this can be tricky. Just be careful you don't launch these cups into the room because you will not find them. You got to be very, very careful here. If your fingers get tired of holding the spring down, gently release it and get it off of there so you don't launch anything with that spring pressure. Okay, I highly recommend one of these, but you can find something else that'll work. All right, once the firing pin assembly is put back together, it should look just like this. There's a little notch here, and it's only going to go together one way, so you shouldn't be able to put it together wrong. If it looks like this, make sure that other spring is in there. All right, very important. All right, now to reassemble, one little tip here is to get some gun grease to hold these springs in place. As you'll see, if you watch the rest of the video, everything has to be kind of held in place while we put it together. So you just want to get the tiniest little bit of grease. Doesn't matter which end of this little spring, just put a little grease on the end of the spring. All right, and then put it in here. Just kind of turn it upside down and make sure it doesn't fall out. If it does, put a little more grease in there. You're going to do the same thing in here, a little bit of grease in there. Make sure you get the right spring. All right, put that in there. Make sure that stays pretty good. This one's going to be the trickiest because there's not hardly anything holding this one in. I've actually used super glue in the past on this. So if we have trouble and the grease doesn't work too good, we're going to probably use some super glue, just a tiny dot of super glue. It only has to hold it in long enough to put it together. Then it'll stay once it's installed. Doesn't matter which end of this spring, they're both more or less the same. This spring sits right here. All right, we're going to try the grease. If that causes a problem, we're going to move to super glue. Super glue is probably the better way to go because it'll be a lot less frustrating, but then you do have to kind of wait for it to dry. All right, so we're going to do that. Take this assembly and it drops down into the smaller hole. Now I'm going to turn it sideways to feed it in there. I'm just feeding it in like that so it sits down in the hole. It's sitting right on top of the spring. You can kind of look in there and see. Make sure your spring's standing upright. That's in there good. All right. Same thing for this. This is going to sit in the bigger hole, but it has to face a certain way. So there's a little notch in the top. This is on the outside of the slide. So what I mean by that is it goes in this way. All right, so it goes in this way. You see how the notch sticks up toward the outside of the slide, just like that. So you want to hold the slide carefully. This is going to go in this way. Now there's a little notch that sticks up right here. So you kind of got to bring that up underneath the slide, put that in place. And you see how that spring likes to move around. So you just want to get it in like this. Okay, I'm keeping a little pressure in this direction with my thumb to kind of hold things in place. So this comes down a little bit, and then this pin here, release the pressure a little bit so you can push this straight down. I'm pushing it down pretty far, and then I'm bringing in the extractor to kind of lock in the shoulder. Now be careful, this could pop up right here. Right now I've got the extractor locked into the shoulder of this pin, so this pin can't pop up. And then this is still sitting in there. That's not quite locked in yet, but you want to make sure that this stays straight and that it's down just about flush with the top of the slide right there like that. Okay, so now I'm putting a little pressure with my thumb. Make sure this spring is sitting straight, which it appears to be. And there's going to be a hole in the extractor that's going to open up, and this pin's going to go up into it. So what we need to do, push this pin down further again, bring the extractor in. See, now the extractor has locked onto the top of the pin, and this is still straight. And this point, move that up and down a little bit until the extractor goes in. You see how far the extractor is? Now the extractor is right on top of that pin. This firing pin safety plunger is locked in. All right. And now we just need to push the extractor a little further until that pin pops up in the middle. All right, this is probably the most difficult part of getting this back together. If you can't get this to go, you can try pushing, get a smaller pin punch, push down on the pin and try and get that spring in place. But if it doesn't go, I have a little trick here that you can try. If you happen to have like one of these little easy hold clamps, these work really well in getting this in. What I do is get a cotton swab shaft like this, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to tighten this up, but I need something kind of, because we have to push this further than this surface here, so we need to get something kind of shimmed in there. There's probably a better tool for this, but this is what I have on hand, so this is how I'm going to do it. All right, and then we're going to make sure that's lined up like that, and now I'm just going to tighten this up, and it pops right in there. Did you see that pop in? And we are good to go. That did it perfectly. Okay, so now what we want to do is test this plunger. Make sure this plunger goes up and down real nice and easy. All right, make sure that pin looks like that it's popped up enough to hold that extractor in place. All right, you see how far in that extractor is? So that's why we needed that clamp to get that in there like that. All right, now all we have left to do is put the firing pin assembly back in there. We're going to reinstall the firing pin. It only goes in one way. It's going to go in like this. All right, make sure that is in the slot. Push it in as far as it goes. You're going to reach a part where it's kind of spring loaded here, as you can see. All we have to do now is put the cover back on, line up the cover with the slots on both sides, and just kind of slide it in as far as it goes. Put some pressure on that, and then you want to press this pin down. You want to press this pin down far enough to push this on top of the pin to hold it in place. And then once it's in there like that, you just push that all the way in. It should kind of pop in place. If you want to make sure, you can press down on this like you did earlier and make sure that's in all the way. Okay, now it's in all the way. All right, and you shouldn't be able to push that out without pushing down on that spacer. So just kind of check that, make sure it won't come out, and make sure everything looks just like this. Now, one more important test here. So we want to make sure that this firing pin safety plunger is properly installed. And the way to check that is to look at your breech face here. That's this flat part here, and this is your firing pin hole. And the firing pin should not be able to be pushed out of that hole. You can see it moving, but it's not coming out through the breech face. That should only happen if you press on this. If you press this down and push the back here, now you can see the firing pin does come out through the hole. All right, and when you let go, this should pop back up so you can't push it through again. So this being up prevents the firing pin from coming out. So that's a very important safety feature. Now it works, let go, now it doesn't. All right, so that's a very important test that you want to do. Now we want to put the firearm back together. Drop in your barrel, put your recoil spring and guide rod back in. Make sure it is centered right in the middle of the slide, and it is parallel more or less with this edge here. It might bow up a little like that, but that's normal. All right, and then line it up with the frame, just like that. Slide it on nice and slow, go all the way back, and the takedown lever should go back into position automatically. Let go of the slide, everything should be good. Test the slide. All right, and now what you want to do is go through the function and safety check, which I'll link up here. Very important. You want to get some dummy rounds, put it in the gun, and make sure it extracts and ejects properly. Because you had the extractor out, you want to make sure your extractor is working properly. All right, so that's it for the slide disassembly and cleaning. If you found this video helpful, please hit like below. Please check out the description for some of the tools, or all the tools actually, that we used here today, if you need to pick those up. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.